Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dynamic Character Productions' continued coverage of Rites of Passage All-Stars. I'm your host, John Millsip, for the Sunday show, and I am joined by two incredible guests this week. We have, from our very first season, Esau Islands, we have David Jackson back again. David, how you doing?
Doing great.
Excellent. And from Sahara Dunes, we've got Jordan Paula. Jordan, how are you? This is your first time back in one of these Sunday shows. We've had David before, but you're here for the first time. How are you doing?
I'm excited. This is fun. I'm excited to be here back in DCP org. So, yeah.
Well, we had a couple of pretty exciting episodes this week. So before we get into it, just how are you guys feeling about the season so far? You've seen some familiar faces, some people you know. How are you feeling about it?
I mean, it's a dynamite cast and people are coming to play, which is great. You can certainly just see like a different level of gameplay and pace that's happening this season, just with like everyone having high level experience with pre-existing relationships. And I'm loving it so far.
Yeah, it's been fun. I was first introduced to DCP through the long one that happened with like Zucker and John on it. So that's how I first started it. And when the minis happened, I did a mini. So hearing how the people that have done minis are adjusting to playing a longer game is very interesting. It's kind of fun to hear. I think about how that would look so different than doing it all in one day and having to kind of live your normal life while trying to also play a game and the paranoia that goes behind that. So I give props to everyone that's playing. But yeah, no, it's been entertaining so far. I feel like it's getting good.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we had two jam-packed episodes here. So let's just get right to it. So we start off episode 3, and Morgan kind of, they psych out the castle a little bit when they get to this challenge. Say, you know what? It's been 2 rounds. You guys are ready for a swap, right? And you could see the panic in all of every single contestant's face. They were all just, oh my God, here it comes. And some of them were like, yeah, we totally knew this was coming. But it's not a tribe swap at all. Instead, it's just a host swap. And we are graced with Alex and McKenna for this series of episodes here. They get to bring their own personal flair to this. And this is one of the things that we on production really wanted to emphasize, because we have these 2 fantastic pairings of hosts, and we needed to make sure that everyone got in for different rounds. So we got some alternating here of the hosts so that we could have all of that DCP flavor in this season. We felt it was really important as we were bringing all these players back together. Now, we get to our first challenge, and it's a different type of challenge. It's got these hero tasks, these 4 tasks where one person on the tribe has to complete them. It has this element where everyone's trying to flip the card into the cup. So, Jordan, did any of these hero tasks really stick out to you? Would you have volunteered for any of them, or would you have just been okay flipping a card into a cup?
I would have been okay with just doing whatever the heck people wanted me to do, especially this early on. I was not the person stepping up to be nominated for things. I was not somebody that's going to say, oh, I'll do that, because if it's failing, I do not want that responsibility. So, but I'm weirdly good at little challenges like this. I did pretty well with like random put balls through cups and to a hole in my season. So I think I would have been okay at it, but I definitely wouldn't have been stepping up to do any of the hero tasks. That's for sure. So.
All right, David, what about you? Did any of these tasks say, hey, you know what? I'm going to excel at this?
I mean, bouncing balls and cups, I'm all about that. Yeah. So, yeah, the one that Lex ended up doing where you could just, it's like, that's a pretty low risk one where it's like, you can be the hero, but I don't think that, you're not going to be someone that's going to be out there failing for a while, even with some bad luck. So yeah, I'd probably step up and do something, but maybe one of the ones that it's not quite as risky.
Which ones would you say were risky?
Oh, I'm struggling to remember all 4 of them now. So you had the bounce, you had which were all the 4 different elements there.
So we had the bouncing the ball onto the cup.
Yeah.
We had the stacking the 10 cups, like end to end.
That's definitely a
We had
riskier one. That's definitely
yeah,
one of the risky ones because
10 cups is a lot more cups than people realize.
No, it is. It is. And certainly seen like Brittley started on a table, so she's also have to deal with like the reach element of it. So that was certainly one of the riskier ones where it's like you can be doing pretty well, but you don't get the 10th cup on, all of a sudden, you could be the one that's holding up your team.
Yeah, and then we had the slide puzzle. That who was that? That was Karen and Shea did the slide puzzles.
Right.
Which I mean, it's a typical slide puzzle. We see them a lot.
Slide puzzle. I'd be fine with doing a slide puzzle too, but someone could probably beat me potentially, but I feel generally competent at them.
Yeah, I mean, slide puzzles are one of those things that you kind of prepare going into a mini because they do show up quite a bit. They're a simple thing that the designs can change, but like the formula stays pretty much the same.
Right.
And we see in here because with this challenge, you had the Fumo tribe got the card flip quite much faster than the Ignis tribe did. So Shea had a little bit longer on that slide puzzle, but Karen was actually able to make up time on the slide puzzle.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. And we've talked about it a lot with DCP production. Like we get tired of that standard survivor formula of like, let's end the challenge with a puzzle.
Right.
It's predictive. It's just easy to predict. It's something that we see a lot, and we don't think it really leads to as big of these like great equalizers that some people think it is. So when we sometimes, like in this instance, when we're doing this challenge, right, we decided, hey, let's put this slide puzzle at the beginning because it just changes the formula a bit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's a good call. Like something that DCP really excels at is just like really good challenges, really great diversity in challenges, having these multi-layered, longer challenges that really put a lot of different skills and teamwork to the test. And I mean, this was another challenge that put that at the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we got like the basic challenge aspect of this too, which all the tribe had to do, which was just that flip of the card into the cup, which seems easy, but it's one of those things that you're just not used to doing.
Right.
And we see a few people struggle at it this episode. We saw, Brittley struggled a little bit, and then Andrew struggled a bit with it. And this is really where the two tribes became like, there's a big discrepancy in how they were doing at that point. Now this challenge was brought to us by the mind of McKenna came up with this idea because she had been watching Thailand at the time that we were creating the season. And if anyone watches the Survivor Special, she knows she was watching Thailand until a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And when watching it, there's a challenge in Thailand where they have these hero challenges, and in between, the tribes have to like row the boat to get to those hero challenges. So when proposing this season and these ideas for these games, McKenna comes up with this idea, okay, but what do we do for the row the boat? So we come up with this idea of like flipping the cards. It's a task that we've done in DCP games before. It's a simple one that we can watch. We can really keep track of who completes it. Mm-hmm. So the idea was, okay, so we can do that as like a rowing. It kind of resembles rowing here. And then that's where that challenge comes from, is that idea of the tribe working together, but still having like these individuals who are working on these heroes tasks to complete it. But if you can't paddle a boat or flip a card into a cup, it can get a little out of hand. And that's what we saw with the Ignis tribe as they were struggling and struggling. We get to Brittley putting the cups up, and she drops one of the stacks, and then by the time she recovers and before they can even get to the third task, Fumo's already done. So the Ignis tribe goes back to tribal council for the technically third time in a row. Not a place you want to be at the beginning of the game, but alas, it's where Ignis is. But let's check in a little bit with Fumo first, because we see them towards the beginning of this episode here, and we get Sarah talking about how leading up to All Stars, she hadn't spoken to Lydia because she didn't want to let it slip that she was cast on All Stars. She was really worried that she would let that slip. And I mean, anyone who follows along with this Seattle trio of Lex, Lydia, and Sarah know that they're like super tight. They spend a ton of time together. David, if you're going into an all-star season, like, what are you doing in this pregame? Are you avoiding talking to these people that you've made bonds with? Or are you just like still having regular conversation and just avoiding the topic of DCP at all? How would you approach that?
I mean, I think I would probably lean towards the latter. I think I'm kind of like Sarah, where it's like I don't want to pregame. It almost feels just like, not quite in the spirit of like the game to just like be pre-making any plans. So I kind of like that too, where when I get cast, I usually don't tell anyone, because I don't want to know. And it's always great when like you come in, it's like, oh my gosh, I know some people here or something, and you didn't even know it. But yeah, I definitely I agree with Sarah. I like trying to keep it keep it pure there.
So Jordan, these people knew they were on this cast for like 6 weeks leading up to the game. Like, what do you think? Could you have kept your mouth shut that long and like not let it slip?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a long time to keep my mouth shut, and I tend to I guess I don't communicate enough with people on my season enough, but like I follow them on Instagram, or like I feel like I would have a hard time not saying something, at least to people that I still have a general relationship with. And like even some of the other people that I know in outside life, I was wondering like, oh, is the Simmons going to be in there? Is an Austin going to be in there? Or these people I've known just out of curiosity factor. But no, I think it would have been easy not to communicate with them. But if you have that type of relationship where you're constantly communicating with somebody, that would absolutely slip. I would just be like, I'm not, you don't have to tell me we're not talking game, but like I'm doing it just because I don't think I could keep it a secret. But I agree, it feels a little dirty to do it before, like make any type of plans or strategy or communicate in game talk, I guess, outside of it, at least. I don't know, feels a little weird. Just allow the game to be pure in that sense and go in with the same intentions that you hope everybody else does. But at the same time, you don't know that there's not 17 other people that are doing that already. So it's a battle in your head. I would be very paranoid that during that 6 weeks, other people are already communicating about it or something. So who knows?
But then again, pre-gaming could backfire, because if you pre-game too hard, people might see that. I'm like, oh, so-and-so reached out to everyone. He's pre-gamed with everyone. And then, so I guess I don't know how much pre-gaming is an advantage, I guess, because you don't know what tribes you're on. You can agree that you're going to work with someone, but you can agree with that on day one. And that doesn't even mean you're going to follow through with it. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like you just don't have perfect knowledge going into the game, right? Like you put your feelers out, you could try to figure out who this cast is and who you might want to work with, who you might want to work against and everything.
Right.
But if you don't have full information, and which you're not pre-game, because you're not going to know what tribes you're on, like you said, David, how beneficial can pre-gaming really be at that point? Like, it can help you a bit. Like, we see in previous seasons, like not even pre-game, but just like knowing people on the season can be very beneficial. But we're talking all-stars here. We're talking a bunch of people who know each other. So you can, and we've seen in those first couple of episodes, even this episode, we see people from previous seasons coming together, working together, and collaborating because of it. And if that's the case, like, how much is pre-gaming going to help you? Unless you're distinctly reaching out to people who you've never talked to before,
sure,
it's not really going to benefit you much in the game.
Yeah, I would think it's kind of weird too. I'd be like,
yeah, right. If some random person from DCP history is just like, hey, Jordan, so how you doing? Like, I know we've never talked and we would like have no reason to, but could we maybe have a reason to?
Yeah, I think that would be like a trying a little too hard. I'd be like, I do not trust this person immediately. Like,
exactly. And then day one, all it takes is someone being like, so and so reached out to me before the game even started, never even heard from him talking game. And then that's immediate a target. It's an immediate target if this person is playing really hard, really fast.
Yeah. I agree.
Absolutely. But like, let's go to one of the more wholesome moments of this episode, where we have Corey talking after the challenge, and he's just so proud of himself for stepping up, doing this hero challenge, and I'm sure he's proud. I'm sure a lot of that pride comes from winning the challenge, but I think also it's just like of putting him out of his comfort place, because Corey likes to play it a bit safe sometimes with his gameplay. We kind of see that with, yes, he's kind of like maneuvering everything in that first episode of the season, but in this episode, like we see like he likes playing it a little safe. He was doing a lot of work in the first episode to make it easier to play later on, and just seeing him like step up for this hero challenge and him being so proud of himself. It's one of those moments that we really cherish here at DCP. Like those are the type of like genuine moments when people are talking about themselves and just like how they're stepping out of their comfort zone. It's one of those things that really makes you, I hate to say proud again, but it makes us proud of the contestants themselves.
Yeah. It's one of those high risk, high rewards things. You get that
Yeah.
the dopamine, you feel good about it, you step out of your comfort zone. I mean, like everyone's gonna be afraid, if I'm gonna take this leap, I better do well. And I don't know if I'm going to do well. It's the strangest task in the world, who other than being maybe a slide puzzle expert, like who can knows they're a great stacker of cups. Like it's just crazy. So I mean, I envy that feeling. I think for sure it's one of those really cool moments to have afterwards whenever it does go your way. And then, but when you do step into the positions, you risk it going the other way too. So, I mean, hey, high risk, high reward. Good for him. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, whenever I see players play multiple times, whether it's DCP, Survivor, or any game, it's fun seeing people play in different ways, in different strategies, and push their comfort zones. Because I think that's such a fun way to play. Of like, I don't want to play the way I played last time, so cheers to Corey for stepping out of his comfort zone, and taking a chance.
Now, one more thing I want to talk about on Fumo before we move back over to Ignis. Shea's blunder with Jeremy, where he is in a conversation with Jeremy and he's like talking about wanting to work together with him. And he names all these other people he's been having conversations with. He says, hey, if you want to work together, if there's something you think we could come together with, that would be great. Otherwise, it's no skin off my teeth type of thing. I think this really highlights how important it is the way you phrase things in these games, and how much it's one of those moments that really shows you have to always be on. You need to be on 24/7 while playing, especially a long game where there's constant communication happening with so many different people. You have to keep track of all your different conversations. We kind of mentioned it, but like we see it coming up in the next episode where we have a lot of talk of like different alliance names and stuff. We have an alliance name talk in this episode too. And when you're messaging over Facebook, there are so many times where you have to make sure like your conversations are named differently, or you're changing the picture of them so that at a glance you can tell who you're talking to. And this is an in-person call. This is a call that Jeremy and Shea is having, and Shea's just not in that mindset of 100% have to be focused on everything, and he makes this slip. So, David, how do you keep focus in a situation like this to make sure that you're not, casually naming every person you're working with?
Yeah, you gotta. It really does have to be constant vigilance in terms of just protecting information, because oversharing can be really dangerous. And if you position yourself as someone that's working with everyone, people are going to realize you're not really working with anyone. If you're playing the field and not having any loyalty to one person, then it's hard to really trust that person. So it's really is about like keeping your guard up at appropriate times. And I think Shea just let his guard down a little bit and spoke a little too much truth, maybe, and can get you into some trouble.
Yeah, Jordan, you played a mini. Like you weren't even allowed to message. Like when you're thinking about this and you're on these Zoom calls individually, because you didn't really get opportunities to do that as much in a mini either, where you get these one-on-one calls. So you're in a one-on-one call talking to someone about something. You're getting constant barrages of messages, hopefully, from other people who are wanting to work with you. Like, what do you do to focus?
I genuinely, that seems like the craziest thing to me is like being able to message all these people at one time, because it's just like if you're dating a whole bunch of people at one time and like trying to keep track of names and like where they grew up and all this stuff, and then not like, oh shoot, you're not the one that had two brothers or whatever it is. Like that's so difficult. So doing that with something on the line, as far as like, okay, I want to get farther in this game. I want to keep things close to my chest, but like it's exhausting as well, at least for
Mhm.
somebody I hate lying. I hate all that aspect of things. So it's like, I just want to be upfront with you. Here's where I'm at. Here's what's going on. But you can't do that. Like, you can't be showing all of your cards. That I imagine after 2 or 3 days, it gets way more natural as you're having, like, building these relationships to just start talking and saying things. So I think you'd have like a web of different things going on. And I honestly don't know. It sounds exhausting. And then when you have a bunch of paranoid people, you have to be so worried about how you're saying things, because my intention is not how you perceive that a lot of times. Or if you say one word and they're like, that one word makes a huge difference in how I'm like hearing what you're saying. It's like, oh, I'm talking with all these people. Oh, are you just chit chatting? Or are you like talking game? Like, are you just trying to keep everyone close, or like you actually strategizing type deal? So I think it allows other people to go down a rabbit hole. And yeah, the more you talk, it may not be the best.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things with the long game is in a mini you kind of have to make these instinctive decisions a lot of the time. You kind of just have to like trust the people you're with. In a long game, you get time to think about your actions, think about the people you're working with, and when you're constantly communicating with them, it can make you more suspicious. It can make you less suspicious. And we can see how constant communication can lead to blindsides, like it did in episode 3. We can see how constant communication can lead to the vote flipping to a completely different direction, like it does in episode 4. It's all this like intricate moving parts when it comes to a long game that don't feel as present in a mini. They're there, but because of the time constraints, you have to go on instinct a little more. Sometimes one of the downfalls of players in a long game is they think too logically and they think too long about what's going on. So we talked about Corey being proud of the challenge. Now let's go to Ignis, who feel everything but pride when it comes to challenges at this point. We have Simmons talking about, 2 challenges in a row. What the F are we doing? We have Karen not being impressed. We see that Ignis wins the challenge in episode 4, but like you're losing all these challenges. How does that, what's that do to tribe morale, Jordan?
Oh my gosh, it would be exhausting. Like to just be losing all the time. And it doesn't, like, you step up and you try and be that hero or you try and do something and then it backfires on you. But also, how can you blame someone for not being good at stacking cups? Like, it's just
Mhm.
unfair in a way. So there is no one to blame because these people took a chance. But at the end of the day, then yeah, that's a mix of emotions, because no, you're not skilled at that thing. You stepped up to do it and said you could, but realistically, would someone have done better? Maybe at a slide puzzle, that could be your only argument in that sense. But overall, that just has to be frustrating because there really is nowhere to blame. There's not really a weak link in the sense of somebody is not running as fast as the rest of the people or something. So I imagine, and then it's exhausting because you have to go back and talk strategy, whereas the other tribe gets to kind of just hang out and still sing kumbaya and get to know each other and not have to play as hard. So they're able to build more relationships rather than have to be talking about strategy. So imagine it's very frustrating right now.
So we get to this point where we're seeing these exiled boys get back together. We have Austin, Austin Moorhead, I should say. We have Simmons, we have Andrew, all together. Obviously, they all played Exile together, and they're talking to Mike Rick as well, and we see them talking about this frat boy alliance. We see Mike say, "We're a failed fraternity. We're the type of people that everyone will root against, working together." And when we look back at Exile Island, because 3 of these people are from Exile Island, we had some pretty recognizable alliance names there. There were so many alliance names. I know Austin and I were naming all our alliances, but the most predominant alliance in Exile Island, of course, was Glam, our alliance consisting of Greg, Lilly, Alex, and Simmons. Well, when you're picking a name for an alliance, you have to make some choices here. And what I have for you, everyone, David, Jordan, all our viewers, I have a secret scene here showing the origin of the naming of the No Moss alliance that these boys came up with.
With that being said, if you're all cool with it, I would like to delegate this group as ma'am.
Oh my God.
Ride this into the sunset.
Man, let me guess. Mike, Alex, or Mike, Andrew, Austin.
Wrong season, man. Wrong season.
Alex, right?
Flashbacks to Exile, dude.
Ma'am?
No, as long as it's M apostrophe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but Simmons is Simmons. So how can we? No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
yeah.
Very true. Very true, though. Very true.
I'm
Hey,
kidding.
hey, live Moss.
Liv Moss.
Oh, no mas.
No
Yeah,
more-
I'm
no
fine
more
with I'm fine
bullshit.
with that. Y'all like, I mean,
I like that. No Moss. No more bullshit.
no. I hate I
So once again, Simmons finds himself in an alliance that is named strictly based on people's initials.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this way of naming alliances, David?
Well, Simmons looked so disappointed by it. He was like, "Ugh." But finally organically came to a place where it actually had a bit more flavor to it. Your creativity points, the initial route might not be the most creative way to go, but overall the no bullshit no more bullshit alliance, I like it.
Yeah, I think some of Simmons's initial reaction to the name is that Austin proposes ma'am to start, which obviously rhymes with glam. And you could see the reaction in Simmons. He's just like, oh no, not again. Like, let's not do this again.
Yeah.
It's funny. Jordan, what do you feel about this alliance? How do you feel about this alliance coming together? Are they a failed fraternity? Are they the people you're rooting against? You know two of these people personally. Are you rooting against them or are you rooting for them?
Listen, I'm rooting for Simmons. I think he's playing very well. I like Austin, but I think them four coming together is very annoying, and I don't like it. So I am rooting against them as a whole, but rooting for individuals. I think it's exactly how Mike said. It's so stereotypical. Yes, all men getting together. And the fact that there's three of them from the same season and no one seems to care. They're just like, we'll just join them. But they care about like Danny and Maddie together. I'm like, I know Austin and Simmons to have a good relationship. So I'm like, maybe that's just because I know that. I'm like, why is that not looked at more? But again, different relationships. But I'm rooting for Simmons and Austin. However, yeah, I think it's exactly how Mike explained it. It's a failed frat. They should have called it that. And it would have been funnier. But
that is a better alliance. The self-awareness of Mike on that was great. And that was great.
That was funny. I appreciate him calling it out. I was like, okay. Yep.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Maddie and Danny and them being viewed as this duo because they both came from the same season. They were talking to each other all the time. But there was no point in this game where they were actually a duo. Mm-hmm. The two of them, they talked. They were working together. It was more a trio with them and Simmons, though. And the fact that Lydia calls them out at this last tribal council really leads to the point that everyone's kind of driving home. We have to separate Maddie and Danny. And we have Karen and Andrew saying this in a room with three people from the same season in it. And this kind of leads us to this vote where we get to tribal council in this one. And we have a bit of fire here. We got people saying they've been left on red. We have Andrew saying some people are still in confessional apparently because they never got back to me. To which we have Maddie responding, oh yeah, that was me. So one of the interesting things about Maddie when it comes to the Ignis tribe, Maddie is the only person in the Pacific Standard Time Zone. Everyone else is on Eastern. And that's one of the kind of like the beauties of orgs in general. Like, you get this opportunity to play with people all over the world. And it's one of those things you have to manage. So Maddie would be working and then go straight into tribal council or a challenge, depending on the day. So she doesn't have enough time to like jump on calls with people during the day. She's like messaging them and like, so I guess sometimes leaving them on red. It's a time management thing. Like, it's a long game. Like, you don't have to worry about it in a minute because there aren't messages. Nobody can tell if you're on red because no one's sending a message for you to read. Yeah. And it's so funny. I love the way that both Andrew and Maddie handled themselves and with this. And just like Andrew calling out Maddie there. I think it's funny because she's my sister. So I automatically think it's funny when people call her out. And I just like how calm Maddie is in this voting confessional about saying that Andrew has her on there. Like, it's okay. It's cool. I got this. We're fine. At that same tribal council, we have Austin quoting Eminem. We're really hoping we don't get that copyright strike because it would be really awkward to pull that episode down. Might make things really confusing for people in the future. It is our first blind side because we see Danny go here. And Maddie and Brittley are really left on the outs. What were your concerns, thoughts? Jordan, I mean, you were on the same season as Danny. How are you responding to this?
Oh, I'm a Danny stan. I'm his number one fan. But I think Danny and Maddie are just clearly so intelligent. Like, I think that's what they come across, very intelligent. They're both extremely well spoken and like thoughtful in everything that they're doing. And I think it comes across really poorly when it's the two of them from the same season that seem to almost have very similar minds. So I think that didn't help them. It is unfortunate that they got recognized so quickly when there's the three guys sitting over there from Exile that they should have thought about a little bit more. But yeah, I'm sad to see him go so early because he is fun to watch play as far as like how he thinks and what he's doing. And he's very methodical, but I think he tried, and he admitted it. He tried a little too hard at the beginning there, played a little too quickly with everything, but be disappointed not to see him on my screen anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah, you saw Simmons kind of say it in an early episode of like he wanted to like tell Danny like slow it down. And you could see that obviously it came to fruition where he was just going a little too fast. He overplayed a bit. And sometimes, even though there wasn't necessarily this duo, perception can become reality in these things. And if the perception was that they were a duo, that's all that mattered to people. Because people at the end of the day are just looking for a reason to target someone. And, unfortunately, he gave them a couple reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that like we try to show as much of the story as we can in our episodes, but sometimes we have to cut things because we get a lot of content when you have 16 people submitting Zoom calls that are hours long. We have to cut it down a little bit so it's a little more concise for all you viewers. Danny got pretty paranoid leading up to this vote. He was worried that his name was out there because of previous votes. He was worried about advantages. And that was it kind of got that way whenever they got close to tribal council. And I think this really caught up to him at this point and that's part of the reason why Simmons is kind of okay letting Danny go here is that it just feels like, okay, he's a great thinker. He thinks really well, but he's getting a little too erratic. And I don't know how much I can trust him moving forward.
Right.
Now, before we move on to the second episode, there is one more thing I want to mention. Austin Moorhead. Austin Moorhead is on his third season of DCP. He's made it to the end twice. Well, just about to the end. He gets cut right before final tribal council. He is gone. At this point, he has gone to all but 2 tribal councils in his career. He didn't go to one pre-merge tribal council in Exile Island. He didn't go to one tribal council or pre-merge tribal council in Exile Island. That's it. So this man knows how to handle a tribal council because he gets through a lot of them. And he's unfortunately, I guess he got voted out at the first one, this one, but luckily still in the game. But it's just letting him go to more tribal councils now.
It's a cockroach.
So in the aftermath of this blindside, we start off with some pretty awkward scenes between Maddie and Simmons here to start episode 4. Maddie's just like, okay, so what's going on? Jordan, how do you approach that? How would you approach a situation where someone you're working with closely, someone who you thought you could trust, blindsides you, completely votes someone out, and then you have to have that awkward conversation about, okay, what's going on? Do you believe them? I mean, we see Maddie throughout this entire episode going on, should I trust Simmons moving forward? You know, as someone who knows Simmons, should Maddie trust Simmons?
So I know Simmons in a very like loose sense of that. So I don't even know if I would. But I would not handle it as well as Maddie did, that's for sure. I would be way more emotional about it. I would feel very hurt by it. Because if anything, I think the biggest thing Maddie kept saying was just like, why not come to me and say it? Like we weren't working together in the same sense that like everybody thought we were. It's that hurt of not being included at least and knowing where it's going, because it sounds like Maddie would have made that decision to go over with them too, just to be included into something like that. So I understand exactly how she was feeling with that. But yeah, I think you have to address it straight on, like say, kind of put your foot down and be like, what's going on with our relationship then, because this is going to affect my game moving forward. So yeah, I think you have to have that awkward conversation, and I don't know if I would trust them moving forward. I mean, especially knowing you weren't included or wasn't even thought to pull you aside, he just immediately grouped them two as a duo. So yeah, I don't think I would trust him moving forward, just because clearly he had something else going on the other side that seems to be a little better for him. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It certainly establishes that you can't trust him, but it's also important to not make an enemy of someone like Simmons. It's important to make him feel like, there's a path forward for your relationship, even if you don't feel like there is, because you don't want to just feel like, well, I'm out for revenge, you're my target. So there's this delicate balance of like trying to figure out if you can work with someone, because at some point, like if you get betrayed by enough people, you still have to work with someone. So you sometimes do end up having to work with people that have betrayed you. And, there is a possibility that they'll find a path forward together, but she's not going to forget that.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is Maddie is clearly the better Millsip at handling blindsides, because she had a much better response than I did. So we get to this challenge. This challenge is it's built up. It's based on an Arborio challenge where 2 members of the tribe complete a task, and then they add 2 more for the next task over and over until we get to the end here. And we see it's very interesting because no one's told exactly what everything is. They're given 4 words to describe what the challenges are. They have to assign the 2 that start on each of them. And we're watching this, and we get to the plank section. So this is the second segment where they have to plank for a combined 7 minutes. And if they don't plank for 7 minutes, they get a 2-minute penalty on top of that 7 minutes. So they had to plank for a combined 7 minutes, and then they could move on to the next section. And if they didn't, then a 2-minute penalty on top of that after getting to the 7-minute point. And we see Dear Ashley. Dear Ashley starts lying on the ground and Superman posing. And we at production are watching and monitoring the challenge. It's like, what's Ashley doing? And eventually we're like, okay, Ashley, that's not a plank. Ashley's explaining in vegetables and in videos with production and chats with production that she thought that the Superman pose was a plank, and like the viral planks that used to happen.
Right. She thought like,
but it's just one of those like humorous moments that comes out, and sometimes we see it. I mean, we saw it earlier on when we were talking about the flip cup in the second episode of Maddie not knowing what flip cup is, and we assumed that everyone knew how flip cup worked, and again we see it here with like something that we've used planks before in challenges and everything. We assume everyone knows it, and sometimes you just need to be a little clearer with the instruction as to exactly what a plank is.
If you were clear with the instructions, we wouldn't have these golden moments. So
exactly. So there's that toss-up we have to make as production.
Like, to be fair, was she wrong? I mean, like, could she have just done planking? Like, you didn't explain it well enough to which one it was. Maybe she was right.
I like that she did think that was the endurance thing of like, oh, I guess
stay
here.
Yeah. But we get to the end of this challenge, and we see Inglis finally win an immunity challenge. We get their very happy reactions to everything. It's a very wholesome moment. And then we get the Fumo post challenge. And this tribe, we haven't seen much of them yet because they keep winning. But now that they lose, all hell breaks loose on the Fumo tribe. It seems like at the beginning, there's a pretty simple plan. Let's set this up. We have our first target, we have our second target. And then Kylie goes to bed. And Kylie wakes up, and it's all chaos. And this is a fantastic confessional from Kylie. Blaming the West Coasters for staying up late and changing everything. And, she also says, she has the episode title in this confessional saying, Lex's name is like speaking Beetlejuice. Say it 3 times, he appears. Oh, what do you make of this Fumo tribe dynamic, David?
So bizarre because, we haven't seen them go to tribal for a bit. So, you have all these people that are strategizing for days while they're winning. And so it's kind of curious to see how's this all going to play out. And the answer was chaotically. It's just like they've all gotten to know each other well, but that there's all these different dynamics going around that are all, it was certainly one of the more chaotic leads up to a council I've seen in a while. So it was entertaining to see, but it was also like trying to keep track of all these different plans and changes that were happening.
Yeah, Jordan, when you have all these names going on, you have people who have been at this point where 4 days into the game, people have been strategizing, talking, making their own relationships, and they finally get a chance to actually vote someone out. Is there any option other than chaos at this point? How do you prevent chaos from erupting?
No, because they've been getting away with maybe doing some strategy talk, but not necessarily like having to throw out names. So I think as soon as you have to throw out a name, then it's when, all those little relationships that you've been building that now do I have to report to this person? What am I going to do? You have to start making decisions. And yeah, all it takes is one domino to fall to then set off that telephone game and get paranoia, whether things change through the grapevine. But yeah, it was fun to watch, but I can only imagine the heart palpitations that they all had at any moment because who knows where it was going. But yeah, it has to be chaos. Names have to start being thrown out, and the person that throws the name first is typically not necessarily always in the best position on the first vote. So
yeah, and one of the more interesting dynamics about this vote is we see a lot from Kylie on this vote. Obviously, she has those fantastic professionals we were just talking about. We also have her talking about her personal relationship with Corey, because this is All Stars, and we're pulling a lot of people from the DCP community and just the wider org and survivor communities who have known each other for a while. They've talked to each other, they interact with each other outside of games. They just genuinely are friends with each other. And we see Kylie talking about Corey and how Corey is someone she cares about in real life, a friend of hers. And we see her relating back to her Monte Carlo game, where she spent a lot of her Monte Carlo game kind of like hovering for Mike, making sure things were working well for her and Mike, and how it kind of cost her game. So Kylie gives us this analogy of the ship going over the waterfall, and she has to hop off and just let Corey go without her. David, how do you approach that? How do you approach having a friend? Can you be emotionally connected to people in a game like this? And if so, how do you make the decision to cut them?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to be able to separate game and personal, because you never want to play a game of risk and actually end a friendship. We're playing a game, and sometimes those lines can get blurred, especially in a game like this. But I think people that have been playing these games enough can hopefully have that perspective of the difference between the two. And I applaud Kylie for being able to do what's best for her game, even though it conflicted with a personal thing. And she was learning from a previous mistake. She was conquering something of I need to make a change from the way I played my previous game. And this is that moment. And she recognized it. And I applaud her for it. And I also think, Corey went out with, a really good attitude about it too. So I think it was handled well all around.
Yep. Now, one of the more intriguing moments in the episode, we see Zucker and Shea flipping a coin to figure out who's going to put a vote on Jeremy in case of an idol play. Now, behind the scenes, there's a reason. So that entire group of everyone on the tribe who decided they were voting for Corey, they knew someone had to put a vote on Jeremy. And they decided how to figure it out was that 2 people would go into a breakout room, flip a coin, so only the 2 of them knew who cast the vote for Jeremy. So no one could be blamed for it. And then we get to tribal council. We have talk about the vote and everything. We get Corey. Corey kind of at this point knows what's going on. He knows he's about to go. And we get to some great voting confessionals. And one that really sticks out is Jeremy's confessional. And this sticks out for me because a lot of us on production, myself, McKenna, Morgan, Ian, and former contestants, Jeremy, Corey, Karen, and also, of course, production member Carrie Underwood, all played a game 3 years ago. That's how we all met each other. And Jeremy, in his voting confessional, as he votes out Corey, this is low-key revenge for Morgan and Ian from 3 years ago. Because Corey was one of the people who voted Ian and Morgan out in that game 3 years ago. So Jeremy and Corey, we know have history. We've seen them, kind of declare war at each other in this first episode. And we've come here. We're at this pinnacle of this conflict at this point. And Jeremy just dredging up the past here and bringing that back for us. All right. So we're getting towards the end here. And I have a little game. We like putting games at the end of our Sunday shows. So I've got 3 pictures from these episodes. And I want you guys to give us a meme caption for each of them. We're going to throw them up on Instagram later. And we'll see who everyone thinks came up with the better memes. Oh. So are you ready? Are you ready? I have 3 pictures. We're going to start off. We'll start with Jordan. Jordan, you can give us the first one. We'll make David give us the first one next for the second picture, okay?
Okay. Let's see.
Okay. So here's our first picture. We're talking big responses to things. We've got big Lex. Jordan, what do you got? What type of caption do you have for this picture?
I would say this is like me whenever I see ice cream or something like that. Where it's like they bring out the ice cream cake at a birthday party rather than a regular cake. So me when I see it's ice cream cake rather than regular cake, I guess is mine.
Oh, right. That's a great one. I love that. David, what do you think? What's a good caption for this picture?
I think captured wise, it's that moment when someone gets rocked out of the game and it's exactly who you wanted.
Of course. So here's our second picture. David, you're going to give us the first one for this.
I mean, Karen captioned herself the best with "not impressed." But
right.
Another one would be when you get swap screwed, and it's exactly the wrong outcome of a tribe swap.
Right, Jordan, what do you got for us?
I'd say this is like when you're at tribal council and that one person's taking way too long to answer the question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've all been there.
Yeah, you're like, you're just talking in circles.
And then, of course, we have this one. So this one's a little different. You got to give us 2 captions here. What's the response? What's the initial saying here?
I mean, this looks like a classic smelling the BS. Who's BSing who?
I don't know. It's hard with 2 people here saying this is when you get caught with like your hand in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
Mom comes
of course.
and she's like, oh, "What are you doing?"
Well, there is that. Keep an eye out on the DCP Instagram to see those captions and voting your favorite. And before we close our Sunday show, we have to do it. We've got to talk MVPs. So, Jordan, these last 2 episodes, we saw a lot happen. We saw blindsides. We saw friends having to turn on friends. But who stood out to you as the big MVP for week 2 of Rites of Passage?
I would say, I think Simmons. I think he set himself up very nicely with getting into that alliance and having Austin come over. And he had to make a statement and make a decision as to which side he was going to. But I think he set himself up nicely. It seems like he's kind of, nobody's out to get him. Even Maddie maybe doesn't know if she can trust him or not, but I agree because she's going down a route of knowing she can just take out Simmons all of a sudden with his standing in the game. But yeah, I think he didn't. Hate to see that he had to take out Danny, but I think it sounded like it was good for his game. So, yeah.
All right, David, who are you looking at this week?
I like the Simmons pick. It was one I was considering, but I think in terms of just the level in the game gained from the first week, I think Jeremy seemed to be at the bottom. And at the end of this week, he put himself in a really good position. And I see him as now in a position where he can really open up his game where, it was looking like he was going to be an early boot and had too much of a threat level. So I think he really repaired the state of his game the most this week from what I saw.
Yeah, I really like both of those picks. Obviously, Simmons is working really well. He's in a very good position with the No Moss Alliance, plus Karen. Maybe Maddie, maybe not Maddie. Who knows what's going on there? Jeremy absolutely did such a great job at being someone who was really on the outs in that first vote. And while he was initially a name, and yes, he was the secondary vote getter here, he wasn't the primary target, which was huge. If I have to choose my MVP, and I'm going to go with Mike Rick here, because I think the way Mike Rick handled the blind side and talking to Brittley in episode 4 was a lot better than the way Simmons handled that conversation with Maddie. And I think Mike Rick, while he is, he's saying the same thing to Brittley. I know this because, I have Maddie's my sister, so she tells me these things. Mike Rick said the exact same thing to Maddie in a call as well this round, but he was really presenting himself in a way where he seemed like he was still a really good number for both of those two. And he's maneuvering himself into a position where if he wants to go against that failed frat, he has that opportunity because he is keeping these connections with Brittley and Maddie open. I just really like the way he's positioning himself. But we had two dear players depart us this week. So let's just, before we end, Jordan, let's reflect. Danny's game as a whole. How'd you feel about it? How did you feel about it? What did you think of his gameplay?
He played a very different game, I think, than he did the first time, which is what he wanted to do. Last time he was very loyal, had a solid group, and if anything, he was known as very calm and collected on our season throughout the entire season. So to hear that he was getting paranoid and maybe he just hadn't set himself up in that loyalty, or like he was got grouped together because of his loyalty, maybe knowing how much he stuck with the Kylies and the Johns throughout his season, that they just assumed that with him, Maddie. So played a different game. Maybe it's a game that didn't suit him as well and got him into, but yeah, I think he played a little too fast, but he admits it himself. So,
all right, and David, you played with Corey. Let's reflect on Corey's gameplay here.
When I was watching Corey's game, I even said to myself earlier on of like, ooh, he's playing high risk, high reward. And he said that exact same phrase about his own game later on. So, he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he was playing high risk, high reward, and it didn't pan out this time. But when you're playing a returning game, when you're playing with other people that have already seen your game, that might know your bag of tricks, so to speak, I applaud him for trying to, do something different. But, he was swinging for the fences, and he might have he might have just gone for it a little too fast. But he's a tremendous game player, and I think other people saw that in him and saw that strategy and cut it right there.
Yeah, I really agree. I said in the preseason draft, Corey is someone who's like been known to be a great number 2, and you really see him taking the lead here. And I really commend him for doing that, because it is not an easy role to do. It's a terrifying position to be in, to be the person kind of bringing people together, to be the person putting names out. It's a scary thing. And all the props to Corey for the game he played this season. Like you said, it's so high risk, high reward. If that paid off, I mean, we could be sitting here commending him for winning the game instead.
Absolutely.
And with Danny, I agree. Danny played a really loyal game in Trinity Falls, and in this one, he seems a little schemier, right? Like, he seemed to not just want to sit there and kind of like just stay strong. He built that core alliance with himself and Maddie and Simmons, and he was using that and building on it. But he also wanted control in the game, and unfortunately, someone saw it as him being in control with someone else as a power duo, and that they needed to be separated. But obviously, we at DCP love both Corey and Danny. We are so sad to see them gone, but the game continues next week. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Sunday show.
Wait, I got a question for Jordan. Jordan. Jordan, do you have a winner pick? What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like I kind of want Maddie to go. Someone from my season, get a girl. And then I think she's just in a place that now I'd love a little underdog story of coming back from this all. So I'm rooting for Maddie.
That's a good pick. I got my eyes on Sarah. I think Sarah's killing it.
Okay.
She's playing a low-key game, but she's my winner pick. I want to lock it in.
Oh, I like both those picks, because both of those two, I mean, I might be a little biased up here in the Pacific Northwest, but I love both those two women. They're both very strong women and both very capable of winning the game for sure. And with that, thank you everyone for tuning into the Sunday show. You, of course, can always catch our new episodes of the Rites of Passage All-Stars every Monday and Thursday. They're followed up by the exit interviews on Wednesday and Saturday. And that's it. That's all I've got for you. Make sure you like and subscribe, click that notification so you don't miss any of these episodes, because we have so much content coming at you this season. Like us on Instagram, follow us there, join the Facebook group. There's lots of chatter going on. You get to ask, if you join the Facebook group, you get to ask questions for those exit interviews. So get on that, and we'll see you all again next week.